Hello, you caught me looking through the people who are on here already. And I see someone saying, good to have you, David from Botswana, but I don't see a David. And so somebody knows something that I don't know, which is very cool if you're supposed to be a prophet. And anyway, we're here to talk about some things about the prophetic tonight, and continuing in this sort of time where I'm looking into the deeper levels of character and things like that have to be settled and have to be looked at so that you understand yourself, and so that you can make so that you can allow God to work in you so that you're ready to give out to the best of your ability. I thought we would look at what the Bible gives us as redemptive gifts, they're called, or motivational gifts. And there are 7 of them listed. They are prophet, serving, teaching, encouragement or exhortation, giving, leading, and mercy. And anyway, so when you are a prophesying or a prophet, you need to minister from the core. Remember, we've been talking about values and sorting those things out, and the way you perceive things. So this takes it to an even a different level. And when you learn about what your motivational or redemptive gift or gifts are, you begin to understand at a greater level who God has wired you to be. So studying this kind of thing isn't a personality test. That makes it just a little bit too crazy and makes us too boxed in. But it is a tool to help us understand. So personalities can be changed and formed by what goes on in our lives and what happens around about us. For example, I'm an extrovert, obviously, but I went through a season in my life where it was a pretty dark season, a pretty dark couple of years, and I just became a complete introvert during that time. And now I'm much more a mixture of both. I love to be alone and to regroup and gather energy that way, but I also like to be people. So life has changed me. And that can happen. So we're not looking at something that's going to create a box for you and that you're going to be like that forever. We're looking to see what moves us forward and how we can move forward, and what brings us life, and what things about yourself you need to laugh at, and what things you can actually work on and change. And then you can better understand what kind of prophet that you are. So the motivational gifts are taken, if you want to grab your Bible, from Romans 12, verses 4-8. And I'm just going to read this, and I'm reading it from the ESV version. So it says this: for as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function, so we, though many, are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Let us use them. If prophecy, in proportion to our faith; if service, in our serving; the one who teaches, in his teaching; the one who exhorts, in his exhortation; the one who contributes, in generosity; the one who leads, with zeal; the one who does acts of mercy, with cheerfulness. And of course, you know that when it uses the word his there, it's talking also about her. Just had to get that in. These gifts are given to everybody. It's not gender specific. So anyway, these redemptive gifts, the things that get you through life, the things from which you get your focus and your outlook, are given to you at birth by God. They're given to you at birth, and you will each have one of the 7 gifts, but you will also have parts of some of the other gifts. Sometimes you'll usually have 2 main ones, and then sometimes little bits of the other. So you need to listen to these things and look at them and go, oh yeah, I see myself in that, and I see myself in that. And so you are born with a human DNA that you get from your parents, right? But because God lives within you, you have been imprinted with his image. You can read that in the book of Genesis. And you have God's DNA also. And it's this part that is given to you from birth. The DNA, the redemptive gifts are from God. They're imprints of the character of God for your life. And he gave those to you. He's given you this so that, that's wrong. He's given you this because of what you're called to do and what you are created to be. And it's all specifically for you. And it's not a one size fits all. We're often different. And these are markers which will bring clarity and understanding to you as you go forward about your particular DNA, how you are wired in God. And we need to remember that these aren't just human things. These are supernatural, motivational gifts, and they work and are fired up by the breath of God and the Spirit of God. And so it makes it very, very exciting. So these gifts, well, I don't know. Why don't we just look at them? Because we have to go through them. They have to be trumped by love. So it doesn't matter how gifted you are. If you don't have a lifestyle of love, if you're not loving, then you're just a sounding gong, or you're just trouble, and it won't come out. What you have to give to others won't come out in a wonderful way. And so we want to look at them through that lens. So let's start with the prophet. Now, the prophet, what I'm going to do is tell you some of the characteristics, some of the core values, and give you some biblical examples. But just because you have a redemptive gift or a motivational gift as a prophet, it does not necessarily mean that you operate in the gift of prophecy, and it doesn't mean that you're called to the office of a prophet. It just means that you're motivated by that kind of DNA. So the gift of prophecy is something that is available for all mankind, but just because you're motivated as a prophet and you live out your life from that motivation, it doesn't mean that you're going to choose to operate the gift of prophecy. And it doesn't mean, of course, that you are granted the office of the prophet. That is something that you have to grow into and be put into place as. So just so you know, we're talking about things that are inside us that motivate us. So characteristics of a prophet. There are many, 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 and I'm going to go quite quickly through them. So when you're a prophet, you see design. So you are attuned to the mind of God, and you tend to see things in black and white, and that means they're either right or they're wrong. It's very difficult for you to see things halfway, and you'll laugh at yourself and recognize yourself in some of these things. A prophet, if a person motivated by this gift is committed to the truth. Truth. If it is right and God has said it, the prophet then goes after that. It doesn't matter if anyone else goes with them. The prophet follows truth. They take initiative. They love things that are new. They don't do well in long term, but they do take initiative and they get things started. And this is a generalization. Not everybody is like this. Prophets are verbally expressive and can be compulsive about it. Like sometimes it's hard to get us to shut up. We process things very quickly. We have an opinion on everything, and we're quick to share our opinion. We judge and evaluate everything. So when I say judge, I'm talking about testing. I'm not talking about the negative kind of judgment. Even if situations don't involve them, the prophet will be there and, assessing things. They don't have a lot of fear. They have a basic boldness. Their character is quite bold, and they're not intimidated by the things they don't know or change. They need to have a goal. They need to have a reason to live. They love objectives, and people who aren't motivated by this prophet redemptive gift think that's crazy and think that you should just be happy resting all the time, but it doesn't work like that if you're motivated as a prophet. When you're a prophet, you don't tolerate being trapped, feeling closed in, and you are very generous usually, and you give without thinking about it, and sometimes later on you regret it. You're impulsive when you give, and you can shift gears quickly, move from one direction to another. You're a visionary, goal-oriented, objective-oriented, fiercely independent and competitive. And you've heard me talking about comparison and competition lately. If you've been on my lockdown updates every day, I talked about that the other day. And we tend to have a compulsion for honesty and transparency and integrity. If you're I keep saying we, because this is one of my motivations, obviously. And we want honesty. We want you to walk in truth, and we want to walk in truth. If we perceive that an action taken by someone is rebellious, we have no tolerance for it. Like, we need grace from God. And we think of that as hypocritical. We don't like it, especially in leadership, and we'll be hard on people, but we'll also be really hard on ourselves. If you have a comment about anything I'm saying, then just put it here in the comment section, because I'm going through this really quickly. Let's see. We want to make sense out of everything, so we'll go over everything and everything and everything. We even when things don't make sense, we still want to make sense of it. And if there's an underdog, we usually champion them. We can be unsentimental. And once we move on in our friendships, we have difficulty maintaining old friendships. And we tend to think friendships have a shelf life sometimes. We love excellence in ourselves, and we want to see it in others. And we are driven to excel. And we always are challenging other people to do their best and to get out of, anything that we perceive as just, oh, well, come on, it's like, come on, move, do your thing. We base our faith on God's word. If God said it, we tend to believe it. We can be moody. Not everyone, but a lot of prophets are really subject, until they get over themselves and learn to bring themselves to the cross of the Lord Jesus Christ. Prophets can be real victims and full of self-pity and that kind of thing, and have a victim mentality. And it's really yucky. But yeah, we tend to embrace problems. We figure out what to do with them. We rebuild. But we do need time, like I said, to re-energize and process. And we love restoration. We see the damage that sin can cause, and we know that the Lord has an answer for that. And we know that just as Jesus draws near to the brokenhearted, so we can draw near to the brokenhearted. And Ruth is sitting there smiling. We are really quick to celebrate what God has done. Now, prophets have to learn to celebrate what God is doing in other people. That's very, very important. But prophets the black and white prophets tend to love parties, love celebration. And along with that, though, God often calls them to a much higher level of sacrifice in their own personal lives, in their personal disciplines of faith, of their commitment to God, of their commitment to his service, that kind of thing. And they go through great periods of silence when God is working on their root system. And sometimes that can be really frustrating for them. So their core values are strong in this way: belonging and acceptance. They need positive feedback and validation. They love individuality, and they're black and white, like I said, right and wrong. Their core value, they have a core value of excellence, innovative, and freedom. They have a huge freedom. But you got to remember that prophets like this can be like, and will be tempered as they go through their life. So that's important. The weaknesses of being motivated by a prophet or by a prophet core is that you can tend to be judgmental. So you're critical of others. I went through some of this already, but you're also critical of yourself. You can be unforgiving and not willing to overlook the failures and weaknesses of others, and forgetting that we have our own weaknesses too. Prophets often battle with bitterness. They have to battle it through and have to work on it, and they have to get rid of their unforgiveness, which can be really destructive and hurtful. And they tend to value principles and truth more than relationships. And that has a negative side and a positive side, because I personally believe that God, which is controversial, cares more about righteousness and truth than he does about many other things, including relationships. So biblical examples of people who are motivated, their core, it would be Peter, Elijah, Caleb, Jesus' brother, James, Naomi, and Miriam. So that would be a person who is motivated by the prophet. Then there's the servant. So anyone recognizing anything of yourself yet as I'm talking? Just go ahead and say, that's me, or that is definitely not me. Okay, so the servant. Now the principle, the prophet is operating on the principle of design, and that means they're creative in everything they speak and say and do. They're creating worlds and scenarios with their actions and with their words. So the servant sees needs of comfort and food. They see the needs of other people, and they quickly jump up to go and meet the needs of those other people. If you're servant-hearted, you are a team player. You don't have the desire to build a kingdom for yourself, and you're not filled with selfish ambition or arrogance. You can be really practical, and you just love to meet whatever need presents itself in the moment. Trouble with servant-hearted people is that they have a real problem saying no to things, and they get really overcommitted in if you go look at their agendas, they're always double booked. And then they think, well, I think I can just fit this in, and I think I can just fit that in, but it never works out like that. So they have a real struggle with that. They have real trouble with receiving affirmation about they are, and they apologize for their inadequacies all the time, especially when they're serving others. But they don't have enemies, really, just a few, not like the prophet. And they don't have enemies, and they just see the best in other people, and they have a real high loyalty to their friends and family. They don't get angry. Even when someone hurts someone in their family, they just aren't easily angered. It's, which again is, for some of us, we think, how is that even possible? Especially when it's someone in your own family. But let's see what else is good about them. They're trustworthy. Servants are trustworthy, reliable, they work hard, even to the detriment of their own physical health. They spoil children. I think that's every grandmother, actually. They spoil children, and they're always meeting the needs of other people. And they are often in denial when it comes to people's shortcomings, and they won't acknowledge them when they need to, actually. Excuse me, I need some water. So let's see. If the servant-hearted person is in an area, like say they're serving in the kitchen and helping with that, if they feel confident in that area of service, then they will get competitive. Then they want to be more servant-hearted than the next servant. And that's quite funny, actually, at times. But that's how it is. They tend to attract dishonor for some reason. They are the one who gets talked down to, that people are rude to and hurtful towards, and people mock them. But you know what? They have real purity of motive. Regardless of that, they're straightforward and honest, and you can trust servants. They prefer to be in the background. They don't like being in the spotlight. And they know how to be in any kind of environment. It can be really dark, and they won't come away feeling dirty or unclean. They just keep themselves clean. They know what they carry, and they respond well to truth. They can struggle with issues of shame. Shame sticks to them because they don't know how to fight it off, and they very often don't think well of themselves, and so then they think that they deserve to have this shame, and that's why it sticks to them. And they wrestle with self-worth. They think, oh, I'm not worthy. That person is more godly than me. Others are more worthy of glory than they are. And they love empowering other people. And their greatest joy comes when they have done that, when they've empowered someone else. So the major weaknesses are their battle for self-worth. That's a huge one for servants. And they tend to worry and have anxiety about everything. If they don't have a problem of their own to worry about, then they worry about everyone else's problems. That's really a major, major weakness with servant-hearted people. And they are enablers. So instead of training other people to grow up and to take care of themselves, they will take care of others instead of teaching them. And so that can be a problem. So biblical examples of servants are Esther, Joseph, the husband of Mary, Barnabas, Timothy, and Ananias, who ministered to Paul. So I can see that Paula recognizes herself in that, and Rosemary was saying that she recognized herself in some of the things of the prophet motivation. Now, remember, we're going to be mixtures. Now, the core values of a servant would be that they like a peaceful, casual atmosphere. They like loving touch. They like words of affirmation. They have a hard work ethic, excellence in performance. They have unconditional love very often, and they meet the needs of people that they love. Those are their core values. And these kind of people, servants, are what we love to call armor bearers in the church. They're really, really valuable. And a lot of people who have the gift of helps fall into this category. And they have been looked down on traditionally. I remember when I was studying some of the spiritual gifts when I was younger, I used to think, oh, Lord, I must just have the gift of helps. And it's because I'm not good enough to have any other gift. And when you're not good enough to have any other gift, God will give you the gift of help. That was gift of helps. That was what it used, how warped my thinking was years and years ago. And I have no idea why I thought like that, because I quite enjoy, the gift of helps myself. I'd sometimes rather do that than have to do some of the other things that I like to do. And these people who are servants and have this motivation, motivating them, can be really strong influencers. They influence from behind. They influence quietly, but they can really, really influence well. So it's not a lowly kind of servant job that, like we would think of a servant in a human setting. This is a spiritual gift, and it's completely different. So then let's move on quickly to the teacher. I want to get through these tonight because they're important. And then you can think about them during the week and see how God has mixed things up together in your life. And then you'll understand yourself a little bit better, and even your approach to how you're going to give a word or deliver a word, or why you react in certain situations, or why that other person isn't reacting to what you see in the same way that you see. And instead of thinking that they're wrong, you've got to realize that God has given them a certain DNA to see and to speak as a prophet into something in a way that is different than yours. Because you can be a prophet and have that as a motivation, but you can also be a prophet and be motivated by, say, teaching, or motivated by leadership. It's just a big jumble of possibilities. So the teacher, let's look at that. Here we go. Teacher. I've got several. I've got a huge book of notes here. This is my teaching, one of my teaching books, but I always find more stuff. So I've got several piles of notes here that I'm pulling from tonight. So Sarah says she sees herself with a servant heart. That's good. That's lovely. Okay, teacher. So let's run through this quickly. Teachers need to validate truth. So they work hard at validating truth. They love knowledge and they need to be able to prove something. So very often there will be a prophet and they come along and they say something and people don't understand it. I think as we're maturing, we get better at communicating and learning that we have to communicate well and learn to. But I have seen prophets who I just have not understood at all. And then another prophet with a teaching motivation has stepped up and explained what has just been said and makes it clear for everyone else. So they need to validate truth. And they don't receive what you say immediately. They have to mull it over and think it through and go look it up and look at it from different angles and then go, oh yeah, okay, well maybe. And that can drive other people crazy. People who get things just like that. That's not the way of a teacher. And they want firsthand details. They want precision in the way you share. And they love details. And prophets don't usually love details. They if you're completely wired as a prophet, you want 1, 2, 3, and that's it. Don't give me all the details because we can drown in the details, but teachers thrive in the details. So that's important. They process, they make decisions slowly, and they drive impulsive people crazy. But they're usually quite safe emotionally and they're pretty steady. And sometimes they are merciful as well, except not always, because the teacher will be led by things that they understand in their head, and merciful people are led by what they feel in their heart. So there has to be a coming together of those two things. Teachers have a high value and a commitment to tradition very often and to their family, and people think that they're safe. And that's good. They don't like to use personal stories. They prefer not to be vulnerable. And when they're speaking or telling things, and they just like to put doctrine out there. They love Greek and Hebrew and think it makes them a better teacher. And, so they go after those things. Yeah. And if they can't see the end of a process when they start something, they won't start it. Like they'll look at the whole overview and see what's possible, and they actually won't do it. They won't jump in with 2 feet. They can be immobilized by fear, and it will keep them from stepping out and obeying God. So you can have someone with a strong prophetic gift, but they're motivated as a teacher inside, and they just will not step out because they're afraid of taking the risk. So they don't have the motivation of a prophet. So the motivation of the prophet would jump into something. But with the motivation of the teacher finds it hard to jump into something when they're meant to do something prophetic. See, that's how it affects you. They'll be the last one to speak in a group. They usually are practical jokers and love to laugh, but they do it almost without a smile at times. And they tend to be non-judgmental. Like they can listen to people's sin and it's just like, oh, well, like, ho-hum. And it's never, it doesn't shock them. They can hear and they know what to do about it. They know what to confront and they know what to say. They tend to love history and old, established, proven ways, and they have a hard time with new things. They tend to feed their mind more than their spirit, so that's something that the Lord needs to work on in their lives. And yeah, they have selective responsibility. So if they really don't want to be involved in that, they won't give attention to something, even if it needs it. They are also a bit like the servants, unwilling to put responsibility on other people, and so they will do it themselves. And they're not easily swayed from truth. So they tend, when you have a group of people, to be like an anchor. And sometimes because they can understand and explain things, they tend to have an intellectual pride. Very often that it can put other people off. So that's an area they have to work on. And they rely heavily on knowledge, and they think that knowledge is the inside track for all things, but it actually is their inside track. It's not everybody's inside track. And they tend to think that if the more I know about God with my head, the closer to God I'll be. And that's not, of course, how it works. But they are very good, and they're willing to die for their convictions. They believe things completely. So the weaknesses are they tend to be passive and impose responsibility on others. They'll be too patient, apparently, with people who are doing wrong. They struggle with issues of timeliness and responsibility in selective areas, and they procrastinate often. They value reason too highly, and they want to live by sight, and it's a struggle for them to live by faith, and they want to know the end before beginning anything. And they hold doctrine over intimacy. So that is a major, major battle, doctrine over intimacy. And so that's the area that they really have to work on. So Daniel, Luke, Isaiah, Levi, Samuel, Ezra, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Mordecai were all teachers, which I find very interesting. So the core values of a teacher would be understanding, knowledge, truth, accuracy, logic, reason, rational thought process, harmony, social equity, and helping people. So, yeah. Now you've got to think of these things in the light of prophetic words, giving prophetic words, and why sometimes you give it and do it in a certain way. And understanding this stuff about yourself will help you with that. So an exhorter, here we go, the principle of sowing and reaping. The exhorter or the encourager, there's lots of those in the body of Christ. They have the ability to just cross every kind of barrier, and they just can relate to people wherever they are. They're like cheerleaders almost. And they're horizontal in their focus, like they just see people this way. And they don't make anyone feel like a stranger. And they easily share their faith in any situation. Lotta is resonating with the procrastinate part of this gift. Yeah, I think a lot of people do. It's so funny when I read through these things. I don't just think, oh, that's me. Then I think, oh, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're only supposed to look at ourselves. But when we look at ourselves and find ourselves, then yeah, we also need to learn to understand other people too. The exhorter just wants to go out and change the world. They'll be the kind of person that declares that we're going to change the world, and I'm going to be a history maker. And they can have disagreements with people, but they won't alienate people. They're just encouragers. They're skilled in relational things, and they can sustain relationships really well. They enjoy being around people. They're all extroverts and outgoing, and they are actually parties looking for a place to happen. That's what they want. They're great at communication. They teach life from their own real life experiences, and they do teamwork, and they're networkers. It's excellent, excellent, excellent people to have on your team, and excellent to have a prophet who is also an exhorter. So those things go together well, especially when you want to if you see something negative and you want to turn it around and speak on the positive. It's really easy if you have a motivational gift or a redemptive gift of exhortation. You're never intimidated by new ideas and new truth. You love it. New revelation. You're a visionary and you see the broader picture, the largest number of everything. And sometimes people think that you're just a bimbo, like you're superficial and lighthearted, because you have the ability to work a crowd. You were born for that, and it's okay. So you govern by relationship, by you can persuade people, you understand the opinions of others, and you don't necessarily go by principles. You go by what most people want, and then you settle on that. You start things and then you move on. You tend to understand the feelings of people really well, and you understand the time it will take for other people to get to the place where you are so that they can move on. And you're really good at reconciliation. You're a master at reconciliation. You're concerned with communicating God to people. And you will be vulnerable, but you'll do it with the purpose of getting others to open up their hearts. It's never because you suddenly have a moment that you want to be vulnerable. It's because you know that if you'll be vulnerable, other people will be vulnerable. Let's see. You have good intention, but they don't always come. It doesn't always work because you struggle with keeping time. You have a struggle with discipline in that area, and you see spiritual lessons in everything that in life, everything you go through. You work hard, you're very busy, and you function on little sleep, and you have lots of projects going on, and you surround yourself with people who will cover you for all your weaknesses. That's great. But you are an inspirer and an inspiration, and you know how to get people going. And you display the extravagance of God no matter what you do. And you are determined and you love change. So that is an exhorter. And the major weaknesses of an exhorter is that you are people pleaser very often. So you're unwilling to confront people because you don't want to be rejected. And you're bad with time, so you take too many things on and you compromise instead of doing what God wants. Those are that's the exhorter. And the core values of an exhorter: you have a high value on fun and spontaneity. Whatever is your particular passion, that's what you go after. And of course, encouragement and community socialization is super important to you. Personal comfort is important though, but you're innovative and you work well with a team and you network well. So we have how many more? Oh my goodness, 3 more. Let's rush. Giver. Maybe I'll just give you a few of these. So a giver has a generational worldview. So what a giver will do is sow because they're sowing into the future. They're preparing the way for other people. So they're nurturing, they make family environments. They sow where they see that the fruit will come. So if they don't see that an area is going to yield fruit, they don't sow there. But if they do, if you can convince them that there is going to be fruit growing, they will give and they will keep that provision flowing. And they also find ways to keep provision flowing. So that means they're versatile, they're adaptable, and they're hard to peg down on how they're doing things or why. It's just that they've seen that this will be something good to invest in. So money and favor both flow to them supernaturally because God knows that they will use it at good opportunities, if you know what I mean. So you find favor in that, and they spend time looking for opportunities to give, and their core values. I'm just cutting these short because we're running out of time. But their core values are respect and honor, and they always want to be kept in the loop. And that's how they feel honored. So if you have someone in your faith community or in your circle, in your prophetic circle, who's a real giver, make sure you don't just ignore them. Like they like to be kept in the loop, and don't just keep them in the loop because so that they'll give, but honor them in that way, because that's how it is with people who are givers. So they like gratitude. They love it if you say thank you. And they like moderation. They don't like extravagance so much. And they have a lot of self-discipline. It's very important to them. They steward their resources successfully. And they have a value of being needed. So if they feel when they're giving that they're not needed, then they won't give anymore. And they love to be a resource. That's important to them, that they know that they are a resource, and they're always birthing things. Like when you give, you actually have the potential to birth something new. And that's something very, very valuable. And they are futurists in that they're planning, and they are direct. So they're not going to be moved by emotion. They're going to be moved by directness. So they like to be told, I have a need, and I have a need of this much, and this is why. And don't come whining to them and say, beg kind of thing. But this is how. So they birth things. They open doors with what they're able to give. And that is a powerful, powerful prophetic act. See, all of this stuff I'm telling you is different ways different prophets actually operate. So when you open doors with what you're able to give, that is a prophetic act, because you're making a way. And they are often leaders in business. They're able to have a clear and powerful voice through their giving. That is how they speak the word of the Lord. That's how God has wired them. And if they are healthy, there will not be any manipulation in what they do. So biblical examples of this kind of person would be Abraham, Jacob, Job, and Matthew. They were very wealthy men. And so no manipulation, but remember that their voice is in their giving. They speak with their money and how they give. Then there's leaders or rulers. I'm not going to use the long list. There are the characteristics of a leader are that this comes naturally to them. So you'll have a leader coming into your group of prophets, and pretty soon you'll know exactly who it is, because even if you have another leader set in place, the real leader who's motivated by leadership will just start to function in that place, and there's nothing you can do. It's just, is just recognize it. Oh, there's leadership on that person. Now, if they're wise, they'll hold back. But when you're young, you don't do that. And sometimes that can cause problems. They're administrators, they're implementers, they have very high standards, and they can be empire builders, really. That's how they see. They're visionary in that, and they're diverse in their skills, but they are family oriented. They love their family, and they have really strong values about work. They don't have an easy tolerance for people who don't bother to work hard. They love that. And it's like they have a clock inside of themselves, and they are very, very good at time management. Moderation, they like self-disciplined. They, again, are successful stewards of resources. They like to be needed. They like to be a resource. So if you go to a leader and ask, oh, you're good at this, can I use you for a resource? They appreciate that. They appreciate you recognizing what they're good at. And again, they're futurists. They're direct and not moved by emotion. And they're not concerned about the opinion of others. And that really sets them apart from a lot of other people. Yeah, and so we look up to people like that, because those are good skills to have. They do have to work hard at learning teamwork, because that's not natural for them, but it is possible. And the biblical example of those would be Noah, Boaz, Solomon, Nehemiah, and Joseph. And then the last one is mercy. So we read all of those. So mercy, people who have mercy, they trust easily, they enjoy their creator, they're peaceful, and they're affirming. And in all that they do, they try to be really, really sensitive. And they know how to make people feel accepted. They know how to make people feel safe. And intimacy with God and other people is absolutely essential to them. There's no ifs or buts about it, and it's easy for them to just jump in to relationship because they're very, very merciful. And it drives people who aren't wired like that sometimes. Well, it just makes them feel uncomfortable sometimes. And they are designed by God to bring comfort to everyone else. That's what they love more than anything. And the people who are wired with mercy, or they have the DNA of God's mercy in them, they trust the Father's heart completely and easily. They don't have to go through therapy to learn to trust the Father's heart. They just do. And they love beauty. They love comfort. They value rest. And they don't like to have any stress, so they just take care of things so that people around them can have stress, and they've learned to bring order into their environment so that that can happen. They love physical touch, and they like, again, this is another people group that like to have all the details. They love authenticity and transparency, and they love kindness. But mercy is designed to operate from a place of peace and a place of rest. And it's designed to help bring other people into that place too. So what these people can do is quickly pick up on others in distress and, who are having emotional struggles, and they know what to do and they know how to step into it. So what they have to be really careful of, especially if they're prophetic, is that they don't move into what is called unsanctified mercy. So that, and that's difficult for them. And there's a lot of that going on. And unsanctified mercy is when the Lord actually wants you to let something alone so that the Lord can deal with a situation that needs dealing with. And then you step in because of your mercy gift and go, oh, there, it's okay. And that's unsanctified mercy. So you must just give mercy. You got to check in with God, and because if you're wired that way, if that's your DNA, you don't like confrontation and you don't want to correct sin. So, and they also sometimes need real help in understanding how they feel, if it's actually what they're picking up is their feelings or if it's those of someone else. And the biblical examples of this would be Adam and David, John the Apostle, and also Ruth. So I can see that some of you are recognizing yourself in some of these things that I've said. And what we need to quickly do is realize that, I'm going to go back to the beginning of my notes here, is to realize that, again, that even though you may be wired in one way, that can be your dominant thing. You have some of the other things as well working inside of you. So as a prophet, you could be having the motivational gift, like the redemptive gift of a prophet. Then when you operate the gift of prophecy, the way it's going to come out and sound is what I read to you earlier. So, and if you are a teacher, you're going to tend to give words that sound like teaching, and you're going to have to learn to sort that out. If you're going to, if you're a merciful person, you're going to your motivation, when you give a prophetic word, your motivation is going to be mercy. So it's going to come out dripping with mercy and grace. And maybe you need to learn to add something else to that, like leadership, which gives it a strength and stamina that you don't necessarily carry because you're motivated by mercy. So you can look at the characteristics where you're weak and say, oh, I need you, God, to add that to me for who I am. Say you're a prophet and you're an encourager as well, then you'll just give straight black and white encouragement. There will be no holding you back. And the same really if you are excuse me, prophet, and you have the motivation of the motivation or the redemptive gift of a prophet, as well as the calling or the gift of prophecy or the office of a prophet, then you are going to be hardcore. We call them Elijah prophets, and these are big people, and you know, you're big, and you're heard, and you will see this kind of person being a prophet to a nation or a prophet to nations, and they'll be known and seen as carrying the word of the Lord for nations. And so, but not everyone who has the motivation of a prophet is functioning as one. So they could be teaching, but then their motivation inside will be a prophet. So then they'll teach with a prophetic edge. And that's when teaching for me gets exciting, when I listen to a person who's teaching, who has a prophetic edge, and they're able just to bring everything alive and teach from having seen. Yes, one can be both a prophet and a teacher, but